Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
That is right. Don't call it a comeback because this is football and other F words almost old school style. And for the rest of the season, finally, the co-host has been settled and it is Mike Herndon at Mike Miracles on Twitter, paulkarski.com, broadwaysportsmedia.com. I mean, what is it that you don't do? You took a year off. Do you feel a little refreshed? And let me say, the Titans did not reward your year off.
I have a lot of regrets. I have a lot of regrets about agreeing to cover this godforsaken football team for the year of our Lord 2022.
Yeah, it's been a long road to just get back to where we were at 3 years ago, right? I mean, this feels like this feels like Matt LaFleur, just a team that doesn't look really prepared week in and week out. You're back on the podcast, and it's just if time is a flat circle. Is what I'm saying. And listen, I tried to avoid bringing you on, not because I don't like you or because I don't think you get good content. I was trying to let you still be free of having to come on and talk about the Titans in verbal form.
Yeah, you've captured me, and now you're gonna chain me to my desk and make me talk about the Titans for 15 weeks, and this is gonna be miserable.
Hey, at least I did give you an out when I was talking to you about scheduling this all up and stuff. Full disclosure, I said, listen, come on for the regular season, and then after Ryan Tannehill throws 3 interceptions in the playoff games, you can say your goodbyes and take a nice long break. And now the Titans may not even make the playoffs.
Well, we can at least off-season talk starts like next week after they lose to the Raiders.
Could you imagine the people that I was talking to trying to get this? Because I got hit with like non-competes like all day long for left and right. Because people think that their excuse was, well, it's a non-compete and we don't want this to take too much of their time. Well, people don't understand about this podcast. What makes this podcast so great? It's literally, it writes itself. This is the easiest thing to prepare for. It's like in the off season, it's a little bit harder, but really it's just like, here's the topics we're going to talk about. Just turn on the mics and let's roll. Yeah. And so could you imagine if one of these people had talked their bosses and went through all these negotiations and talked their bosses into joining this podcast and have to cover the last 2 fucking games?
Oh God, yeah, that would be a career, malfunction, just like mine,
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit different because these people I was talking to, you cover the Titans 5 days, 6 days a week,
yeah.
so they're having to relive it again. With
they
me
would
for this.
have been even deeper.
It would have been good for them though, because at least they could cuss, and really let their freak flags fly. But it's all good. The big radio, big TV threatened by me and by this podcast. What better way to really stick it to them than by getting the best and most coveted co-host out there with the analysis and Mike Herndon. So I feel very good. You're going to be able to let out a lot of frustration to kind of compare. You do a show at BroadwaySportsMedia.com that's for Broadway insiders only. So first, go to BroadwaySportsMedia.com, pay $49.99 up front for a full 12 months of access and access to the Mike Herndon show. And people are probably wondering, well, what's the difference between this show and the Mike Herndon show? Well, if you've already watched the Mike Herndon show, you can see a distinct difference between presentation styles and stuff, because it's all you, less me. Maybe that's what's going to draw people there. You know, I'm not there, but less passion. It's not less passion, but less unbridled rage.
It is slightly less rage. I will say, for that show, I'll be getting into a little bit more of like the tape deep dive stuff and everything. Cause just really just from a schedule standpoint, like when this show is recorded versus when that show is going to be recorded every week and released, I'll just have more time to have gotten into the all 22 and look at some of that stuff. So some of those takes will be there. So I definitely think that'll be its own show worth listening to if you like listening to me talk about football, which you may not, and that's perfectly fine too.
Well, it's kind of like all the articles that you're known for, right? And obviously,
Right.
you do the paulkarski.com one, but back in the day before you retired, you were putting out like 2 or 3 articles a week with film deep dives all the way back to your Music City Miracles day. Take all those articles, put them into video and audio format, and that is the Mike Curtin Show. And isn't that worth the price of admission alone? Every week, you get the X's and O's of why this team is such a fucking disaster. I mean, at least, listen, if you're going to at least have to suffer through this horrible regular season that's probably ahead of us, at least learn something and get something out of it. And you can do that by watching and or listening to the Mike Herndon Show, but only if you're a Broadway insider.
That's right. Yeah, it is basically a verbal representation of the old all 22s is basically the idea for the show.
Which is perfect because we never really got into that here because we always recorded on a Tuesday or a Monday. So it never really worked for us anyway.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I got a question for you, Mike. Do you enjoy beer?
I do enjoy beer. I needed like 12 of them last night.
Do you enjoy food?
I love food.
Do you enjoy watching sports when it's not the two-tone blue?
I do enjoy sports generally, not the Titans. Yeah.
Well, I have a place for you. Jasper's in Nashville and West End has all those things, and you can ask them to change the channel when the Titans are on. They will gladly do that for you. Listen, Predator season's about to come up, so you're going to have some more You got UT basketball, college basketball. You got UT football. You got all kinds of local sports. Hell, even Vanderbilt is a more functioning football team than the Tennessee Titans. So head over to Jasper's in Nashville and watch any sports team other than the Titans that your heart desires. And you will have a blast because the Titans bring nothing but misery. However, Jasper's brings nothing but happiness from their delicious fajita bar that they have, from their cocktails, from their cold beer. Everything is at Jasper's in Nashville. So head on over to your new elevated neighborhood sports bar in Jasper's on West End.
Will they put the Texas game on for me so that I can enjoy Mullet Madness?
Listen, I got them to put on a Memphis basketball game, so they will definitely put on anything for you. They have TVs everywhere, so it's like changing one TV is not a chore where they have to change like 15,000 different TVs and ask someone. They'll just go up there and change them for you. That's how good the staff is at Jasper's.
After the last season, it is pretty incredible that the only football team I'm really willing to watch in public right now is the Texas Longhorns.
That is incredible. It's what a world that we live in. That maybe Texas is back and old Titans football is back. The Buffalo Bills versus the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football was an utter disgrace and disaster. Some are calling it the worst Mike Vrabel performance or worst Titans performance under Mike Vrabel. I tend to agree. I tend to think it's one of the worst losses of the Titans era. And I think it's definitely worse than 59-0 Patriots game because here's why. That team sucked. That team had no expectations. So, of course, they got their asses blown out by the New England Patriots in the snow. This is a much more worse loss than that one. I cannot believe how many people voted the 59-0. I think that they are clinging to the past and not understanding that the expectations for that team were entirely different for this team. And I'm floored. They played worse than the New York Giants game, correct?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the Giants game, at least they came out and they were in control of that game for most of the game. Now, like, they should never have been in any sort of close contest with the Giants. And like, yeah, I know the Giants beat the Panthers. The Panthers were
like
awful.
who the fuck? Hey, Titans and the Panthers probably be a really close game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, but that's where the Titans are right now, and they should have never. But at least they were in control of that game. There were good things that happened, like the offensive line played well, the pass rush played well. There were things that you could look at and say, "Oh, okay, that's kind of exciting. That could be something to build on."
It's like things you thought you saw that were good. You thought indicated that okay, week 1 is a liar for the Tennessee Titans because this will translate versus other teams.
Yeah, but then the Bills game, zero redeeming qualities from this team. I mean, like if you wanted to really stretch, like you could maybe say, like, all right, well, Treylon Burks played pretty good. That's about it. Like honestly, like even like. I still am relatively high on Nicholas Petit-Frere and Roger McCreary. I didn't think they played great last night, but I mean, good Lord, there was nothing that they did well, like zero. They didn't coach well. They didn't run the football well. They didn't pass the football well. They didn't block well. They didn't tackle well. They didn't stop the run well. They didn't stop the pass well. They couldn't catch punts. I mean, you name it, they sucked at it. It was as thorough a beatdown as you can imagine at the NFL level. And I mean, frankly, the Bills could have made that as bad as they wanted to. If they wanted to keep their foot on the gas, they could have scored 60, 70 points. Like I have zero doubt in my mind.
Well, when you have Trey Avery out there for whatever reason, starting the game and then ending up on Stephon Diggs almost the whole game, you're inviting disaster. The way that the Tennessee Titans play football invites epic disasters, and the way they handled themselves last night or Monday night was it throws up all kinds of red flags because there's a lot of issues with this team that are happening this year that never happened in previous year. And some of that is the way that Mike Vrabel has handled his in-game clock management, and his strategy has been atrocious. Penalties are killing this team as well. And you bring up NPF and Roger McCreary. For going up against the talent they were going up against, I thought they did great. They are still rookies. Caleb Farley, kind of still a rookie, but at some point we got to see signs of life. We're not seeing signs of life from Caleb Farley.
And with Farley, I'm still willing to I'm willing to postpone judgment on Farley a little bit, just because look, I think
how long are you postponing that judgment?
At least until the back half of this year. I'm not, because I mean, think about what we saw from Taylor Lewan and Bud Dupree last year in their first half of the season with their ACL injuries, and how bad both of those guys, who were high performers, confirmed high performers at the NFL level before, experienced veterans, how bad they were early in that season coming off of the ACL. Farley has played, hang on, I've got the number here. He has played 126 live snaps of football since 2019. That's it. And it's not like he was a lifetime corner or anything. He had moved to a corner from the receiver position during his career at Virginia Tech, and only played I think about a year and a half worth of corner before last season appearing in a couple games, and then this season appearing in a couple games. So look, the guy is super green. He's obviously very talented, the length and the speed. I don't think the speed is all the way back from the ACL injury. I think that'll come. That's something that you'd like to see kind of in the back half of the year. You start to see, him getting beat by Jake Kumaro and not being able to use his makeup speed to close that gap. I think you would hope to see that go away by the end of this year. But look, he's so green. He's so raw. We got to pump the brakes on giving him the bust call. Now, if you want to say John Robinson, bad job by you drafting a guy who was going to be a project, in the first round when you had a team that was ready to compete right away, I can buy that. I can say maybe he was a bad draft pick philosophically for that reason, but I don't think it's time to call him a bad player yet.
Well, let me ask you a question because I am torn on Caleb Farley. Because I understand he's coming back from an ACL injury, and I understand everything that you're saying. I completely understand it. But how is he going to get reps when last week he plays 15 snaps and this week he plays more just probably because of injury? Where is the team failing him? Are they not putting him in positions to succeed? Are they not preparing him appropriately throughout the week? Because all you hear is about, his size, his length, and his athleticism. And then they got him playing about 10 yards off of these wide receivers and not using any of these physical attributes for any of these corners. So I ask this in this situation, not because I think Farley's a bust, even though I am trending in that direction, but I'm also trending that this entire team is just filled with fucking idiots and losers right now. But where is it going wrong for Caleb Farley beside injury? Or is it all injury, in your opinion?
I think some of it is technique stuff. Like, and certainly injury is playing a factor. Like, he's not as fast on tape right now as he was at Virginia Tech. And I don't think the way ACLs are now, I certainly don't think it's something where we're just never going to see him be what he was during college at this point. It's going to take some time, but the technique stuff is bad. Kumaro being able to kind of pull his arm down and throw him off balance is one of those things where it's like, that's gotta be something that you've got to learn how to combat as a corner. And then, obviously the other play, I think he completely lost Diggs when he should have been in man, and he got distracted by the motion that the Bills threw at him. And Diggs ended up being, wide open in the end zone by himself. That's something that, I'm sure they'll coach him up on and everything. And it's going to have to come with experience. And you're right. It's hard because he's not playing a full complement of snaps. So it's like, are you trying to get him ready as soon as possible, or are you just trying to win football games? Cause I feel like those are kind of at conflict right now. But then again, I don't think Trey Avery's giving them any better chance to win a football game right now than Caleb Farley is. So I don't fully understand what they're doing with him from a usage standpoint. I mean, with Fulton out, at least, I kind of understood it when it was Fulton, McCreary, and Amadi as your three corners. I kind of could get that, why Farley wouldn't be playing at that point, but with Fulton out, it should have been Farley show the whole time to me, and let him work through some of these growing pains, even if it is. I mean, look,
can't be any worse than Trey Avery, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it can't be worse than Trey Avery. It can't be worse than Chris Jackson. Like these, not good corners that they're throwing out there.
Well, to me, it's like the PK has brought up this point for the last few weeks, and it's about plays, not players for this team. And Paul on Monday's press conference essentially said, your talent, your players do not match up to the level of talent of the Bills. And obviously he was alluding to, because previously he talked about Trey Avery on Stephon Diggs. And they weren't doing Trey Avery any favors, mind you. It did not look like it looked like as Trey Avery was on an island. Now, maybe all 22 changes that, but I'd be a little hard pressed to find that most of those plays Trey Avery's there by himself. So if Farley has all the talent in the world and is the most, maybe second most physically gifted cornerback in the room, you could probably argue that he may be the most physically gifted. Why aren't they finding the ways to get him on the field in critical situations? And why is it taking so long to get him up to speed with a whole healthy offseason?
I think part of it is just the technicality of playing the cornerback position. I mean, as far as being long and being able to run with guys, I think he's got that. Although, like we've already said, the speed isn't quite all the way back. But it's the being able to land your punches, being able to stay in phase, all that kind of stuff that, he showed that he could do at Virginia Tech, but he also got away with a lot just because of the fact that he was so big and fast and long and could, really make up for he could cover up a lot of technique mistakes just with that skill set. And when that skill set is somewhat diminished or not as, not as big a gap in his skill set versus the receivers he's covering now, that technique and those deficiencies come into play a lot more. So I think it's a lot of technique stuff, and it's a lot of, frankly, it's just knowing how to play these coverages. Like, you know, NFL coverages are complex, you know, whether they're running like, you know, some sort of match man schemes where you're reading 1 to 2 and you've got to carry the vertical if he gets past a certain point, or you're passing that off and trying to jump down on a outbreaker if the, you know, the number one doesn't run vertical. There's a lot of stuff that mentally they do have to process in the NFL that in college he would not have been asked to do necessarily, or at least not to the level that they do at the NFL level. So I think he's probably still mentally swimming somewhat. And look, he's been with the team for a year and a half. He should know a lot of that stuff at this point, but knowing it and being able to translate it to the field when you just haven't been out there that much are two different things to me. So I think it's bad. Like, he's a liability right now. There's no two ways around it. Like, he's not a plus for them. He's a problem. The fact that they're targeting him, you know, more than they are McCreary when he's on the field, when McCreary is a real rookie, like, you know, right out of the gates here. It is telling. So Farley's definitely not trending in the right direction overall, but I am willing to like pump the brakes on firing him into the Sun bus just yet.
It's very crowded on the Sun bus because the Tennessee Titans, I put this question out there and I kind of alluded to it last night. They have a good old boys problem. The good old boys, they'll take your vitamins, make your bed, you know, say your prayers. Those guys are getting way too many snaps on this team, which goes into the fact of not having enough talent to match up with the Buffalo Bills. And I think it's fairly obvious after 2 games to see why the Bills are the favorite out of the AFC and the favorite for the Super Bowl. Because if you watch all this whole entire weekend, the Bills are clearly the best team in the NFL, and hands down, bar none. But to be able to compete with these people, you have to start relying less on and stop filling up your roster, the majority of your roster, with Jeff Swains and Cody Hollisters and, you know, the Naquan Jones and these. There's too many guys that are just guys getting snaps on this team. Obviously, your team has to have those guys on the back end of your roster, but the problem is it's on the forefront of your roster. Where do you think, why do players who are not top at their position, or probably not even top on this team, why does this team continue to reward just the hard workers, especially in games where you're thoroughly outmatched?
Yeah. So, and I think part of this comes down to like a mentality thing, you know, within the building, just, you know, Vrabel and really, I think more John Robinson, even so than Vrabel, has always been kind of like, I kind of feel like he gets emotionally attached to these guys that are like, you know, he just does all the right things. He says all the right things. He goes and digs out a safety when we ask him to, like all this shit. That I think he has like a romantic attachment to, like, oh, this is the way football should be played. You know, hard nosed, tough, you know, physical, all this stuff. And sometimes I think that blurs his vision of, is this guy talented? Does he bring enough to the table to be able to compete with the teams like the Bills and the Chiefs and, you know, frankly, the Ravens, like all these other teams that are very talented and are physical and tough and do all this other stuff. So, I mean, and look, it's worked at times, right? I mean, like the Titans' identity is a big, physical, tough football team. Won them a lot of football games in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. So, like, I get it to some degree. That's part of their identity, and some of those identity guys are okay to have on a team. But it's when you're starting to stretch those identity guys into, like you said, key spots, to where you're relying on them and you just don't have the playmakers the difference makers that these other NFL teams do, is where you kind of get into trouble. I mean, like the Bills have holes on their roster, and that's something that I think, is interesting, because I feel like they are not that good at corner right now. Like they've done this the first 2 weeks without Trey White, which is scary. And they obviously they didn't have Gabe Davis, who's their second best receiver last night.
And Mitch Morse left early, and then
no Ed Oliver, no Tim Settle.
Yeah.
They were missing several of their guys, but they have guys like, they're throwing in guys like Daquan Jones, who we know is a pretty good football player, in for Ed Oliver off the bench. They've got so much depth at key spots that they're just rotating guys through. Jordan Phillips, Daquan Jones, they're throwing Greg Rousseau into the interior to let him rush against Aaron Brewer, because Greg Rousseau is a pterodactyl and Brewer's a T-Rex. It is impressive, some of the spots, but they're able to make up for their deficiencies by being ultra talented at other spots. And the Titans just don't have enough spots, or really maybe any spots on the roster right now, where you just go, man, the Titans are just ultra talented right there. Like maybe safety. Safety. That's about it.
And to be honest, we talk about them being one of the best safety duos in the NFL, but Kevin Byard has kind of been not really doing much these last 2 games, and that's not good for this team. This underdog mentality, when you start believing that you're losers and underdogs, you start playing like you're losers and underdogs, and it's time to change this mentality. It worked for 2018, 2019, maybe 2017 too. But after the 2019 season, when you go to the AFC Championship game, you should stop doing that mentality, because it just starts infecting everything around you when you constantly think that, oh, maybe we're not that good, and so now we have to go prove everybody wrong, instead of, trying to say we are that good and we are going to show you why we're that good, and we're going to stay that good, because this team excuse me, lacks an aggressive mentality when it comes to wanting to attack other teams that are inferior than them. And really right now, I don't know of many teams that are inferior than them. And I think this stems from Derrick Henry just doesn't look like Derrick Henry. And I don't know if maybe everybody's figured Derrick Henry out on top of him coming back from injury. But you're talking about a guy who got decleated in week 1. And then in week 2, Tremaine Edmonds comes in and swipes away, predicted that, okay, here comes the stiff arm, and swiped it away, when normally Derrick Henry would just power through that swipe and send that guy somewhere else. It just doesn't look like the same Derrick Henry. He looked faster and quicker last night, but his vision is just not there right now.
Yeah, Henry has not looked good the first 2 games, in my opinion. And look, he looks bigger to me, and he does look slower, in my opinion. Like and I'm not saying he's like, completely fallen off, but his biggest skill or biggest trait that made him special, the stiff arm is great and everything, and the fact that he's so big makes that stiff arm effective, but his breakaway speed and the fact that he could do that at such a big size is really what made him special. And if he doesn't have that anymore, he's Brandon Jacobs. I'm sorry, but that's what he is. If he's not,
he's like Eddie Lacy.
Yeah. If he's not going to break the 60, 70 yard runs, there are a lot of running backs in the league that can do just as much as he can, as far as these, short runs and making something out of nothing. Frankly, he's not that great at making something out of nothing when it comes to making guys miss in the hole. He needs kind of a clear track and clear runway to get up to speed. And then once he does, he is very difficult to stop. But if this offensive line isn't going to be very good, which right now early returns, you'd say, they're probably not going to be very good, at least not as a run blocking group as of right now. It could be just a really bad year for Henry. And if it's a bad year for Henry, hey, Vrabel said it in the press conference today. What are we going to hang our hat on? Well, obviously Derrick Henry. Look, they don't have a backup plan. This is they're in a burn the ships, kind of situation. If Henry is not the guy that he has been for the last 2 or 3 years.
And let's be honest here. The AFC, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Colts, the Bills, all these teams that have been beaten by Derrick Henry year after year have made adjustments to Derrick Henry. It used to be everybody was playing nickel and dime, and then you got these big old bruisers for the Tennessee Titans, and they're just going to run it down your throat, and they can because you got these little boys out there trying to tackle a man. Well, now all these other teams got big men coming in to tackle this guy who aren't afraid. I mean, you saw the New York Giants. I mean, just literally no fear comes in. Jihad Ward, no fear, just slings. When's the last time you've ever seen Derrick Henry fly like that? I mean, he looked helpless. And all the AFC teams have now decided we are stopping Derrick Henry. We've always tried to stop Derrick Henry, but now we have the players that can execute our game plan on stopping him. And there's no team that's done that more successfully, in my opinion, than the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have built a defense that looks like it's essentially stopped Jonathan Taylor for the most of the game until the game was out of hand. They kind of just played prevent defense. That team is built to stop Derrick Henry. That's not a good thing because that's where Derrick Henry has made most of his money on these contracts is against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And speaking of contracts, this Tennessee Titans team made an error in redoing Derrick Henry's contract because now if they cut him before June 1st, instead of getting $12 million, they're getting $6 million. And if they cut him after June 1st, they'll do $10 million. And let me say something. And maybe this gets into the next phase of our discussion where it's the staff and the future. But building around an injured 28-year-old running back and having that be your identity and your philosophy in 2022 is not a good thing. Doing and changing his contract around, not a good move by John Robinson. Right now, and listen, I'll preface this with saying all these players and all this staff has a chance to change my mind. Good luck in trying to change my mind at this point because I said when they traded A.J. Brown on the Broadway Sports Media draft show, so go to BroadwaySportsMedia.com, get your insider pass, and you get access to the draft show from last year where they traded him live. And I said, I'm emotionally checking out of 2022 season. To me, this screams that they are rebuilding for the future. And obviously, you would love to have A.J. Brown stay here. But listen, there's also the other side of this whole equation that A.J. Brown did not want to be here. 3 weeks before the draft, he's pretty much said he doesn't want to be here. So it doesn't matter. All that to say is that I said I will not be emotionally invested. In fact, I laughed hysterically last night at the Tennessee Titans because I just like, well, fuck it. They don't care. Why should I care? And here I am. And the season's definitely not over, but the starting out 0-2 historically makes your path 10% chance you're even make it to the playoffs. And people say that they're lucky to be in the AFC South. I don't know. I mean, yeah, they're lucky, but I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of look a little bit better these last 2 weeks, as a whole.
The Jaguars by far are the best team in this division right now. Like through 2 weeks, they look like
I hate it.
Confidently run football team.
And if anybody can turn this around, it's Mike Vrabel, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't think the season's over. Like this team is, if anything,
no Super Bowl aspirations, right? Do you have your 0% chance?
Zero.
Even if they make it into the playoffs, it's 0% chance, right?
No chance. And that's the thing. And that's why I think the whole AJ Brown thing, like, look, I know people are going to say, oh, the stupid Titans let AJ Brown go. That's what's made them bad. That's not what's made them bad. Like that's one part of what's made them bad. But AJ Brown isn't coming in to make that Titans Bills game last night close. Like, right. That he's not going to make that much of a difference. So if you're going to pay him $100 million to play on a team that's going to head into like some sort of rebuild, I mean, I'm not sure there's a ton of wisdom in that, frankly. I mean, maybe it's just a good thing that they got what they could for him and aren't sitting on this crazy contract for the next 4 years as they try to transition into whatever the next iteration of the team's going to be. It's always better to have good players. I get that. Like, I'm not saying it's a great deal for
You'd
them,
always
but
rather have him than rather not have him, but in the big scheme of things, it was pretty impossible for them to get him.
Yeah, but my point is that, like, I don't think AJ Brown makes this a Super Bowl contender versus what we saw last night. So yeah, I think the season's not over. Like, I mean, we saw the Titans in Vrabel's first season, 2-4. The offense looked completely hopeless, and then they made the quarterback switch, and the lights came on, and they got it going down the stretch. And now Tannehill was the primary driver behind that resurgence, in my opinion. And there's no quarterback. Like, say what you want about Malik Willis, he is not going to rescue this team.
Yeah, the chances that he's Lamar Miller are equally as great as the chances that he's Dwayne Haskins.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, he is definitely, the history of third round quarterbacks would tell you there's a much, much, much better chance that he's just a Jacoby Brissett or like, Case Keenum level backup than there is that he's the next coming of Josh Allen. It's not a high likelihood, even though both you and I like Malik. We like him.
Yeah.
We like the skill set and everything, but he's not coming to save this season. But I do believe that Vrabel, and despite, and let me say a little something on this. Like, I know everyone wants Vrabel to come out and like publicly bash Todd Downing and call him an idiot and say this fucking guy's ruining our season. Vrabel's not gonna do that. Like, no matter what. Like, he's
Vrabel even come out on Monday's presser and said that he's just not going to fire anybody.
Yeah.
And let me say something. That's how Mike Vrabel got the job. Is that the previous coach wouldn't fire someone. And I'm not saying that firing Todd Downing fixes everything, but at least doesn't it provide you as a team a little bit of a spark to say, hey, listen, y'all got to get your shit together because, Ryan Tannehill, Taylor Lewan, Derrick Henry, even Bud Dupree, you guys got contracts we can get out of. You guys got to start stepping up. Robert Woods, you don't have to be here next year. Austin Hooper, you're on a 1-year contract. And we know that we may have failed you with Todd Downing, but we got Tim Kelly coming in, and you guys got to start. Stuff like that plays well to not only your players, but doesn't it play well to your fans as well? It's just such an easy move, right?
It would make here's the thing. It would make the fans happy for 1 week. Like, that's it. It would give them their scalp. They'd be all excited. Oh, they finally got rid of Downing. Now everything's going to be better. And then the offense probably wouldn't get that much better the next week. And then
so you don't think it would get better? Because I think that it would, at least you would see tangible difference. But let's say this. Let's say you're right, Mike, and there is no difference. Then for 100% fact, fans know this is not an offensive coordinator issue.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it could get better. It's certainly possible. I don't think Downing's a good coordinator. I don't think firing him is losing some great offensive mind. So I'm not opposed to firing him, but I don't think it's like, oh, well, they fired Downing and now Tim Kelly fixes everything and they go on this big run and everything's magically better. Like, Tim Kelly isn't going to all of a sudden make Aaron Brewer be able to be 6'5" and 320 pounds. He's also not going to make NPF not a rookie. He's not going to make Taylor Lewan be healthy. He's not going to make Nick Westbrook-Akina be a better wide receiver. There's real personnel issues on this team. And maybe a play caller like could mask some of those a little bit better. And look,
he's got a history of masking it. You know what I'm saying?
Somewhat. I mean, they were awful last year in Houston, which isn't all his fault. Like, they had terrible personnel. So, like, I'm not blaming him for that. But I don't know. I think the problems are so much bigger than just the offensive coordinator. And there's stuff that Downing does that drives me crazy. But I also think like I wrote about at PK site last week. Some of this is a Vrabel directive. I'm convinced of it.
I'm with you. I am
think,
100% with you. I wrote about the same thing last week.
Yeah, I think Vrabel is telling him like, hey, we want to run the ball on first down. We want to get ahead of the chains. Those are your primary objectives. And I think some of that shit is coming from Vrabel himself. And he's not going to fire Downing for doing what he's telling him to do, obviously. So
that's exactly a great point, because he pretty much said, if I felt someone wasn't doing their job, not the fact that the guy's doing the job incorrectly or correctly matters to Mike Vrabel. It's just that you're doing it, right? If I felt like someone wasn't doing their job, they wouldn't be here. So everybody's doing their job as laid out by the expectations by the boss. Yeah. And where do you stand on this? Because we're talking about a guy who won Coach of the Year last year. However, that seems to be the kiss of death if you go back and look like at the last 12 years of Coach of the Years. It's not a very good list. Usually it's ensuing, some problems and issues. But where do you stand on this? Because at some point, it's like there will never be a perfect season, right? And the way that Mike Vrabel coaches, the way that Mike Vrabel's philosophy is built around, players have to execute and play to perfection. The margin of error is so slim. And I know that Mike Vrabel is a pretty damn good head coach. You would be hard-pressed not to be a good head coach if you go 12-5, starting 91 different players. But now I'm beginning to feel that's like a little fluky. That's like that's more luck than anything. But at some point, what you're doing causes more harm than good. Your philosophy causes more harm than good. You and John Robinson in lockstep that run first is the way to go in today's NFL is misguided. How do you sell Mike Vrabel in 2023 if you don't win a playoff game?
I mean, I think the way to sell it is, and here's, I think, part of the reason why the Coach of the Year award is somewhat of a, it has a tough history, because I think a lot of times you get that award for overcoming a lot of adversity, right?
Right.
And I think Vrabel overcame a lot of adversity last year due to all the injuries, but also if you look at the roster, there's problems, and there's problems all over the place. And is it Vrabel's job to make the best out of what he's got to work with? Yes. Is it his job to make those players better? Yes. And he generally has done that over his time here. And that's why I don't think the Titans should be looking at firing Mike Vrabel at the end of this season, regardless of how bad it gets over the next.
What if he decides, I'm sticking with Todd Downing? I'm not going to fire Todd Downing. I don't think it would ever come to that, but just what if? Because at some point, you got to factor in a couple different things here. There's history that Amy Adams Strunk does not like that kind of attitude, especially when it's proven to be wrong. There's a new stadium being talked about for this team. Right now, if I was a citizen in Davidson County, in old Loserville, Nashville, down there, because that's where the losers stay and the losers play right now. If I was a loser down there, I wouldn't vote for this stadium. And this is coming from a guy who's been pro stadium this whole entire time. But this product on the field is not worth the stadium and the play on the field. They match each other right now.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Here's the thing with Vrabel. He's 41-26 as a head coach here. His record has improved every year that he's been here, from 9-7 to 9-7 against a tougher schedule with several playoff wins, to 11-5 to 12-5, back-to-back division titles. He's a good football coach. And I don't think I'm not going to let two really bad games throw me off of that so early in the season. And I don't know. I can't imagine it coming down to well, he's just never going to fire Todd Downing no matter what. But I can't get behind firing him after this season, no matter what. I just can't because
I don't think that it will be that thing, but I'm starting to see where a philosophy is so ingrained in this team that until he changes, and I don't think I have a hard time reconciling Mike Vrabel being a good head coach or great head coach and change. Like those two things are mutually exclusive. They are so far apart for this team that my brain works overtime because my brain tells me Mike Vrabel's a great head coach. But will this team ever change with Mike Vrabel as head coach?
well, and that's the question to me. Like, is Mike Vrabel playing this style of, especially offensive football? Like, defensive philosophy, I don't have any issue with how they approach the game. Like, do they have bad games? Sure. Is it frustrating when Stephon Diggs, who is the only scary skilled talent on the field for the Bills in that game, goes for 12 for 143 and 3 touchdowns? Absolutely. That's frustrating. That's a coaching issue.
And that's something that can be corrected during the game. That's what I don't understand. That's why I have a hard time reconciling the elite coach that Mike Vrabel can be with the lack of willingness to change even in a game.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with them philosophically defensively. Like I think a lot of the stuff that they do,
the overarching philosophy,
yes, is really kind of cutting edge as far as like where the NFL is going, with the simulated pressures and all that stuff. And honestly, Vrabel's kind of been at the forefront of a lot of that. But offensively, they are very retro, old school. And I would love to know deep down in Mike Vrabel's soul, does he believe that this is really the best way to win football games, period? Or does he believe that this is the best way to win football games with Ryan Tannehill as my quarterback and with Derrick Henry as my running back? Because we haven't seen him really with anything but a limited quarterback and in Derrick Henry. Right. Like we saw a little bit that first season with LaFleur when they were trying the Deion Lewis thing and all that. There was a little bit of that in there, but for the vast majority of Vrabel's time here, it has been Derrick Henry and a limited quarterback. And I don't know, like, you're not going to take this offense with this personnel and become the Chiefs overnight. Like, you're not going to be able to just drop back and throw it 40 times a game out of shotgun and empty and all this stuff with this personnel and be effective. Like, it'd probably be a complete disaster. So I do think what they're doing right now probably does make sense from giving them the best chance to win with this personnel group. But I feel like the personnel started to get old on them. They tried to replenish some of the offensive line stuff that didn't work. It didn't take with, Isaiah Wilson, Radens, obviously, like we've hammered that a million times at this point. The offensive line became a weakness. Now Derrick Henry looks like he's lost a step, and then Tannehill lost his best weapon. So I kind of feel like what we're seeing right now is just what this philosophy looks like with worse players around Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, and Derrick Henry being a lesser version of himself, frankly. And it's not good. But if Malik Willis, if they do decide Malik Willis is eventually the guy, does that philosophy change? Do they start to look, all right, we're going to be more of a shotgun spread team. We're going to run the ball, but we're going to run the ball like the Ravens run the ball with all of this quarterback run stuff involved and misdirection.
Let me ask a question about this, if I can, real quick, just because this is an interesting thing, and I was thinking about this last week. Let's say that they keep Malik Willis because they saw enough in practice and everything that they feel that they can run this offense. But didn't they see all that under this offensive philosophy? So now you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator for a rookie quarterback and a entirely new system that may or may not work after he's been busting his ass trying to learn this one. So I guess, let's say Malik Willis is part of the rebuild. Let's say Malik Willis isn't even part of the rebuild. What does a rebuild look like under Mike Vrabel when you have to have a quarterback in this kind of league that plays like Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert? Can this be can they duplicate what they saw last night in Josh Allen? Can they, and it doesn't have to be a completely Josh Allen, obviously like a shitty ass quarterback that turns into an elite quarterback, but can they draft a guy or scout a guy and you trust them to basically let the offensive coordinator have autonomous control and change the offensive identity?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Isn't that crazy that we don't know? Like,
that's the big question. I mean, because it would be a big departure for them from what they've done structurally. And look, like, there's a lot of concepts that Malik Willis is learning right now that will translate to any offense. Like, all of these NFL offenses run the same concepts. Like, they're all going to run like a sail route. They're all going to run, levels. They're all going to run mesh. Like, all of these concepts are the same. Now, the way they're coached can be different. The way that they're implemented can be different. The way that they dress them up from a personnel and formation standpoint can be different. But I do think like whatever he's learning now will be applicable to whatever offense they evolved into. But I look at this team and you think about like what's the worst case scenario, right, moving forward, because we're not in a spot where like there is a best case scenario, because I think this team revealed itself to be so far short of the AFC contenders last night that, like we said earlier, if they do find a way to sneak into the playoffs, I don't think they're going anywhere. But, the worst case scenario is that you limp through this season, finish 8-9 or 9-8 or just outside of the playoffs. You manage to get like a middling pick, and you don't learn anything about Malik Willis because you fought to the very end with Tannehill to try to get in the playoffs, and you don't know going into next season what you are. And I guess at that point they'd probably just try to run it back and maybe get some better players around those guys. But there's just, I don't know what the future of this team looks like at this point, because as much as like Tannehill is still, I think, a fine quarter. Like, honestly, Tannehill's kind of been the least of their problems. I know he threw a couple picks last night, one of which was a tip ball. The other was just a miscommunication with Nick Westbrook. But he's kind of been the least of their problems so far.
Like he was still a problem last night. He wasn't great.
Yeah.
But when you start going down the list of reasons why the last 2 weeks have looked so terrible, Ryan Tannehill's way far down on the list for each week. Like, it's just so far down the list, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And as much as I feel that way, I also feel like, I mean, what are they doing if they bring him back for another year? I mean, like, where's this team going? Are they going to be good enough to make a playoff run next year with Tannehill? Like, I find that hard to believe. I don't know. They're definitely approaching a crossroads here, and there's going to be some very interesting decisions to be made. And look, I mean, John Robinson has done a lot of good things for this football team, but he's put himself in a bad situation with some of these draft classes the last few years. I mean, 2020 and 2021 both have been really bad so far. And 2022 looks good.
And he didn't do himself any favors by sticking with $2 steak, tastes like shit Aaron Brewer, which we talked about all offseason, how Eric Flowers is sitting right there.
Yeah, I don't understand how Eric Flowers is in this football team unless he's asking for $12 million or something like that. I don't know.
At this point, I don't know what he's asking for. Sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal that has void years or something. Make it work, because Aaron Brewer's not the solution. This offensive line sucks. It stinks, and it makes everything around it stink. The only two bright spots are on the right side, and that's Nate Davis and Nicholas Petit-Frere. Even before Taylor Lewan got injured, he wasn't looking like old Taylor Lewan. And I get that he got injured last night. He's probably more than likely out for the season. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but I would assume typically your non-contact injuries typically mean you're out for the season. That could be the last time we see Taylor Lewan. Because if I'm Taylor Lewan and I'm going through another ACL, another year older, and I have a booming podcast, I'll be quite honest, I'm retiring. I don't, I would not blame the guy for retiring, and I definitely think that the Titans are going to cut him. There's no reason next year that you should not see a changing of the guard, barring a Super Bowl win. It would have to take a win in the Super Bowl for there to be all three of these guys back. Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Taylor Lewan. In fact, I think all three of them should go. I think the best thing for this team would be to find a trade partner this year for Derrick Henry for a 5th-round pick, get back the pick you traded away for Dennis Daly, and trade him out of here. Because I think that if he's gone, I don't know if the run game gets any better, and they probably keep on plugging away at the run game. But at least you have now a better chance at figuring out and trying something different. What this team may look like with or without Derrick Henry. Because right now, it's been proven you're not winning a Super Bowl with the leading rusher in the NFL. You're not winning major games or even going to the Super Bowl with Derrick Henry. Like, it just is what it is, and I love Derrick Henry. Alabama fan all my life. I've always loved Derrick Henry, but we got to be real here. And I'm not saying Derrick Henry is the issue. He's just another issue in a pie chart that's got 1% for every issue, because it's like it's a disaster of a team, and it comes down to what you said earlier. Comes down to John Robinson putting himself in bad positions, not adjusting during the COVID year, and just sticking to his guns and doing what he wants. Only drafting guys from the Senior Bowl over guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who didn't make it to the Senior Bowl, and all this stuff. Like, he's got to get out of his bubble, because he's just as stubborn and just as culpable as that performance last night as Mike Vrabel is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff. Like, here's the difficult part for me with both Robinson and Vrabel, because you can't argue with their success, right? Like, both guys have been unmitigated successes as both GM and coach of the Titans during their tenures here. Like, neither one has had a single losing season to this point. They may be about to, but they haven't to this point. But there are problems, and there are problems that I think everyone to some degree recognizes. Like, Robinson's almost thumbing his nose at analytics, and same with Vrabel. To me, is a problem, because it's not that analytics is the be all end all. And you and I have hit this thing a bajillion times on this podcast at this point, but it is free information that may help you make a better decision. And that is all it is. It doesn't have to trump tape evaluation. It doesn't have to trump anything else, but it is free information, and it is dumb in a billion-dollar industry to be turning away free information that all of your competitors are getting. So I don't understand that. I don't understand. And I think some of that ties in with the philosophy stuff and how they feel like they need to run the ball and all this stuff. And, there's some hard-headedness that is rooted in this organization that I feel like maybe a losing season would be what it takes to get that out. I don't know. But there's certainly, I understand the gripes when it comes to both Robinson and Vrabel, because they don't do things the way that the rest of the NFL and the rest of like media at large says that things should be done. And look, I've defended for years the fact that when you have Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, this is probably the way that you should approach the game. You can't pretend that you're just the Chiefs now and expect Ryan Tannehill to go beat Patrick Mahomes like that. Like we said, that's just not going to happen. But they don't seem to be moving any steps in that direction. In fact, they're like almost heading in the other direction. to this point in 2022. So I don't know. Like it makes you wonder what long term this thing looks like, and whether are we ever going to see anything that's different out of this organization, or is it just going to be the run pass punt offense and a bend but don't break defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were looking for answers to questions in this Buffalo game, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find anything concrete that makes you feel good about this team. Ryan Stonehouse, you put out a tweet that says this team should build around Ryan Stonehouse on Monday night, and I said, well, this team's already built for Ryan Stonehouse because he's getting all the work in. I mean, 11 drives. And Mike Vrabel still wants to point back, well, we did some really good things in that first drive that's scripted, that's supposed to look good. It's supposed to look like one of your best drives. And then you completely shit the bed for 10 drives after that. I mean, just a comedy of errors this team was last night. And you can be angry. I'm just choosing to laugh at it at this point. It's a hilarious team that tricked everybody, right? It has tricked everybody going into this year. We thought they were one of the deepest rosters in the NFL. That turned out to be false. We thought this is one of the best head coaches who can get the most out of any player. That's not happening right now. We thought that Derrick Henry may be slow, but he'll look like his old self sooner rather than later. And that's not so fast on that one. He still has a chance, though. We thought that the offensive line was going to be bad. That's the one thing that really we all got proved right. That this offense and this team lives and dies by the offensive line, and it's terrible. Aaron Brewer is so bad, and it's not even really an issue of they look disjointed and not on the same page. It looks like Father Time has caught up to Ben Jones. Injuries have gotten the best of Taylor Lewan, and Aaron Brewer's who we all thought Aaron Brewer was, a shitty piece of $2 steak you get at the dollar store. A burnt, well-done steak that Donald Trump or Patrick Mahomes is going to have to put ketchup on to make it taste any better. That's what this offensive line is. The only bright spots are the players that they drafted last year and the players they drafted in 2019 that are still here. Build around those guys because that's your future.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And look, I think we'll see what happens on Sunday. I think Sunday will give us some idea of whether this team is fully fucked or just not a contender, but could be a playoff team. Because the Raiders are kind of in the same spot, right? But now they didn't get their doors blown off like the Titans did. So they're not they haven't been quite as bad through 2 games, but they lost to the Chargers, obviously, and then blew a huge lead to the Cardinals at home, right? That was in Vegas. So if the Titans can't come out and beat the Raiders, then this isn't going anywhere. Then it almost, they won't do it because hell, chances are the Colts and Jags are both going to lose this weekend too, and that they might still just be a game out of first place when the weekend's over. But it is it's approaching time to start just seeing what you got with some of these young guys if they keep losing.
I mean, at this point, your chances that they beat the Raiders is at what? I'm at like a 5 to 10%, barring like catastrophic injuries to Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller all at the same time. Like they get swallowed up by some earthquake.
I think it's a little better than that. I'd say I'd give them like a 30 to 40% chance to win the game. I don't think the Raiders are that good.
But aren't they just outmatched on offense versus defense? I mean, by a wild degree, because even if Christian Fulton may come back, but Dupree probably won't be playing this week. You're already out Harold Landry. Yeah, are you going to throw Trey Avery out there on Devontae Adams in single coverage because you guys are idiots? I mean, like, I don't like at this point. I look at this Bills game. I look at the Bills offense specifically. I'm not scared of the Raiders defense, but I look at the Bills offense compared to this Raiders offense and think, man, this team really had a chance to as a defense, a Titans defense, to go out here and stop Stephon Diggs fairly easily. And they just shit themselves constantly, quarter after quarter, shit in their pants, getting bigger and bigger. They don't even make diapers big enough to carry the load of pants shitting that this fucking team did on Monday night. So I look at Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller, who are all three as a collective unit better than what they saw last night, better what they saw on Monday night. I just can't have this hope right now. I'm not. This team does not deserve my hope.
Carr is not nearly as good as Josh Allen. So I think that in the Raiders offensive line is really bad. So I think those would be your potential opportunities to allow a little optimism in. Also, it being at home, not being in the Bills stadium on a primetime game, all that stuff. There's some reasons to
Won't be home field advantage, I don't think, Mike, on this Sunday.
I'm not expecting the Titans fans to be whipped up into a frenzy on Sunday. Oh, whatever smattering of them actually makes it down there, which I will be there. For some
Godspeed
reason. So I will be there to either watch the a win that maybe restores a little bit of hope for the season, or the death knell of the 2022 season. So excited for that experience. But yeah, they could beat the Raiders. The Raiders aren't that good. But I'm not. Your hopes are just not that high.
It doesn't feel like it's rooted in realism. Like, I think that's where it's at. It's like, okay, last year you're thinking, well, yeah, but they look really good against these teams and they look great. So there's hope that they could win the Super Bowl, right? You got that hope. Now I'm like, my hope to even make the playoffs is just like slowly dwindling, just cascading into the abyss, and just, it's terrible. I can't see. I feel worse after this than I did after the Broncos game where Tannehill got put in for Marcus and it went on. I don't feel that there's that moment for this team that changes stuff outside of firing Todd Downing, and it still may not work. Like you said, I mean, I'm not guaranteeing it works. Could look better, but how much better? Is it Art Smith better, or is it just, we're gonna drag you to 9-8 season and screw you out of getting a top tier quarterback good?
Well, so here's the reason for optimism. Here's the next 5 games.
Okay.
All right. Versus the Raiders at home. At Indianapolis, they're a dumpster fire too. At Washington, also a dumpster fire. Versus Indianapolis at home after a bye week. At Houston. Those are your next 5. If you can win 4 of those 5, and you're sitting there at 4-3 heading into, Kansas City, Denver, Green Bay, Cincy, Phil, that's a tough stretch there.
Yeah.
If you can win 4 of the next 5, you're back in the race, right?
Let me ask you a question. And this seems a little weird of a question for us to ask, because I've never asked this question. Do we really want them to win?
I do. Look, and the part of this is I'm not totally sold on this this quarterback class being like the be all end all next year. Stroud and Young, I get it. I can understand the appeal for those two. I still don't like Tyler. What's Tyler Van Dyke done to get you excited? What's Will Levis done to get you excited? Anthony Richardson.
Hey, listen,
terrific.
Will Levis is perfect for this offense. He knows how to hand off the ball. They're perfect for this offense.
Will Levis. I'm not sold at all on it. Like, I don't know that there's another quarterback outside of Stroud and Young that I'm actually believing to be a franchise quarterback. So unless you're going to be like top 1 or 2 picks in the draft bad, a top 5 pick, you're just going to get I guess you could get a really good, left tackle maybe to replace Taylor Lewan. That would be your best bet there. Draft another corner. I mean, what the fuck are you gonna do? It's just depressing right now to be in this spot. But
I don't feel any better. Normally after these podcasts and where we get towards the end, I start feeling better for this team. And I'll be honest with you, Mike. First show out of the gate, you haven't made me feel any better.
I'm not bringing a ton of optimism here to the table. There's just not
Company man Mike is dead. Like, company man Mike, he's gone.
Like there's a lot that, I tend to be a glass half full person generally. There's nothing in the glass. Like there's nothing in the glass right now for Titans fans. So I just think it's
just grin and bear it.
Like the hope is right that like Henry starts to get going like he always does later in the year. Treylon Burks becomes AJ 2.0, which he's shown some flashes early. Kyle Phillips gets healthy, learns how to catch punts, and maybe you start to see an offense come together as the year goes on, and the defense maybe starts to play back up to their potential once Fulton is back and McCreary has some skins on the wall, and there's a path I think you could see where like this team does compete for a playoff spot, does win the division, like all that stuff. I think that's still on the table. I don't think it's
us all into its void.
And here's what'll happen if they do make the playoffs. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna go, well,
anybody's game. It's like 10%, 1-8, 1-8.
All you gotta do is win one game. You just gotta win one game at a time, and anybody could win. So I don't know.
We're all just suckers.
We are all suckers. We're all suckers for believing in this godforsaken football team that just never wants to make us happy.
Well, that will do it for us talking about this godforsaken football team. Make sure to go and watch all your sports that are not Titans related over at Jasper's in Nashville, because you'll have a much better time. Listen, you'll have a great time regardless, because they got the best food, the best beer, the most TVs, a really nice establishment, clean bathrooms. That really goes underrated when you're talking about sports bars and all these commercials. These bathrooms are so fucking clean. You could go eat your lunch on the toilet and not feel disgusted. It is a fantastic sports bar to go to, and I encourage everybody to go to Jasper's in Nashville. They have an arcade room where if after you see another run, the fifth run of the game on 2nd and 54, you can go and play some skee ball or go shoot some basketball, play some giant Jenga, because the Jenga won't be the only thing crashing down on your dreams. There's also the Tennessee Titans. So go to Jasper's in Nashville, get the best food, best beer. It is elevating the neighborhood sports bar. You will love it, I promise you. Make sure to go get a Broadway Insider Pass, because why, Mike? What happens on Thursdays?
The Mike Herndon show is released, and we'll be talking about why the Titans suck and really getting into the nitty-gritty of what that looks like.
Yeah, let's look at it this way. It's the Mike Herndon show, presented by Mike Herndon, starring Mike Herndon and Company, something like that, right?
That is the title.
Because you do have Easton playing the role of Caroline, where he gets to talk some.
he does get to talk some.
Yeah, he gets to talk some. He's just a pretty face over there.
That's right.
But you got new graphics. You got a new look for the people who maybe tuned in on the first one. We're like, oh, this production value is a little shitty. We've improved it. It's been improved on the back end. You're going to love the new production value. Make sure to go to YouTube for Broadway Sports. So turn on notifications, because you get this show in video form, and you're going to get other shows in video form as well. And the Mike Herndon show is also going to be, turn your notifications on for that if you're a Broadway Insider. Also go to 440 Sports, because a football show is on Mondays and Thursdays, and it's live 1 p.m. Central Standard Time those times. This past Monday, I talked about the keys for the Titans to win this game. And Braden told me, he goes, Zach, this is not going to be evergreen content. People are going to turn in on Tuesdays, listen to the show, and they're going to say, well, the Titans lost. What good is this information? Well, now you know everything they did wrong, because literally everything I said that they had to do to win the game, they didn't do, and they lost the game. So now you know that I am pretty much a clairvoyant and know what I'm talking about. So go and subscribe to 440 Sports. Turn on those notifications. For Zach Lyons, for Mike Herndon, because I'm Zach Lyons. For Mike Herndon, you can follow him on Twitter at Mike Miracles. For Zach Lyons, wait a minute, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm really butchering this. Classic F words, right? F words pod. We're back, baby.
Todd Downing wrote our outro.
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter at F words pod. For football and other F words, this has been a great show. We're back, full circle. The new-ish look, football and other F words. You have just been effed.
a Broadway sports media production.